McGrowl, Book 2, Chapter 9. The plot thickens. McGrowl, Thomas and Violet were carefully sifting through clues in Miss Rabkin's office when the bell rang, accompanied by the clatter of approaching feet. Violet poked her head out the door and spotted the woman ambling slowly towards her office. "Quick! She's almost here! We've got to get out!" Violet whispered urgently. "We need another minute," Thomas replied. "By tomorrow there won't be a single clue left intact. Stall her." "What am I supposed to do?" Violet asked somewhat desperately. "You're smart. Think of something," Thomas said as he resumed his search. Violet ran out of the office and fell to the floor, writhing in pain in the middle of the corridor. "What's the matter, honey?" Miss Rabkin inquired. "I was skipping rope and I wrenched my ankle." Miss Rabkin dropped quickly to the floor with more speed than Violet would have thought that the 80-year-old woman capable of. "Let's have a look." "I thought maybe you could help me get to the Nurse Boynton's office," Violet said weakly. Ever the quick thinker, she had realized that the nurse's office was on the second floor. By this time Miss Rabkin accompanied her there. Thomas and McGrowl would have had plenty of time to complete their search. "No need," Miss Rabkin said cheerfully. "I've recently completed my CPR certification, and there's nothing I can't handle in the way of a small emergency." And then she pulled out a little bag filled with splints, tape, and an assortment of bandages, and started working away. Violet pretended she was in great pain, and tried to make it as difficult as possible for Miss Rabkin to move her supposedly injured ankle. Meanwhile, Thomas and McGrowl searched frantically. Miss Rabkin was obsessively clean, and had already removed any traces of dust or debris that Mr. Postino may have left behind when he cleaned up at the end of the day. There wasn't a clue in sight. Finally, McGrowl noticed something. Wedged halfway between the window and a small built-in bookcase, the tiniest piece of a torn file stuck out unobtrusively. No one but McGrowl would have ever noticed it. Using his superpower mental strength, McGrowl quickly enlarged and memorized the one fingerprint that he could find. The scrap of paper was tiny and actually contained only a small portion of the complete print. It was enough, however, for McGrowl to quickly determine that the print was made by the same person who had entered both the rooms the day of the break-ins. Chances were good that if the fingerprint's owner could be located, the crimes would be solved. "Good work, boy," Thomas said proudly. He put on his plastic gloves and looked closely at the scrap of paper. All he could make out were the letters Iton S. The larger piece of paper from which the scrap had been torn was likely to contain the remaining letters, and the answer to the mystery. As Thomas and McGrowl pondered the clue, they failed to notice a pair of beady little eyes peering in at them from the window behind Miss Mabel Rabkin's desk. The eyes darted back and forth a couple of times, and then quickly disappeared beneath the window ledge. They belonged to none other than Mel Nutchnick, who, in order to get a better look into the office, was standing somewhat shakily on the delicate shoulders of Lily von Vleck. "Goodbye, Miss Rabkin!" Violet was practically shouting now. Miss Rabkin seemed a little miffed. "For heaven's sake, I'm old, but I'm not deaf." Thomas got the point. He and McGrowl were out of that office like a shot, and halfway down the corridor before they realized they had left Violet behind. "Wait for me!" she called out, and forgetting about her wrenched ankle, ran off after them. "Take it easy, dear, or I'll send you to the infirmary," Miss Rabkin announced firmly before walking into her office and shutting the door at last. As they hurried back to the homeroom, Violet tripped on a combination lock someone had carelessly left in the middle of the hallway. She hurtled to the ground and landed with a giant splat. The first thing she saw when she opened her eyes was a little silver object lying on the floor directly in front of her. McGrowl immediately sniffed it and began to growl, and then Thomas picked it up and realized why. It was a little sterling silver toothpick, and it had the initials MM on it. It was identical to the toothpick Muchnick had dropped at Thomas's house last night. And then the bell rang, and the children began to stampede through the hall like a herd of wild buffalo. But what did the letters Iton, S, have to do with anything? And why, or maybe it's Lton, S, have to do with anything? And why would a respected mayoral candidate go to the trouble of stealing money from small children and breaking into a kindly old registrar's office? All three young detectives pondered these and other questions as Louis Musser swaggered over. He told Thomas and Violet they would have to get him something really special for lunch today if they ever hoped to get off his list. "I'm thinking donuts. I'm thinking devil's food cake. I'm thinking, surprise me." McGrowl was so upset with the unfairness of Lewis's request that he had to restrain himself from taking a bite out of one of the boy's beefy legs. But he knew it was the wrong thing to do, and anyway Thomas was in enough trouble as it was. And then Lewis turned on his heels and ran off to chase after Janie Mingbach, the prettiest girl in the entire middle school. Janie had absolutely no interest in Lewis. She liked older boys and actually had her sights set on Thomas's brother, Roger. She didn't seem to care that everybody knew Roger was absolutely 100% devoted to Violet's older sister, Alicia. At this moment, Roger was busy carrying Alicia's book from one class to the next. Alicia pretended she had strained her hand in a sewing accident and needed a big, strong boy to help her out. Thomas and Violet saw right through her tired old ploy, but Roger fell for it, hook, line and sinker. Thomas hoped he wouldn't lose all of his senses when he reached 16. All day Thomas and Violet passed notes back and forth. Miss Thompson caught them twice. They were almost sent to the principal's office, but Violet pretended her ankle was still bothering her and pleaded for leniency, which she got. During recess, Thomas and Violet huddled together by the drinking fountain and decided that Thomas should show up at the commercial as scheduled, and Violet would accompany him. They didn't want Muchnick to suspect that they were onto his dirty tricks. Thomas decided against returning the silver toothpicks. McGrowl raided lunchboxes when no one was looking and managed to assemble enough good stuff to keep Lewis from hurting anybody. He replaced the missing candies and cookies with quarters he was able to find by searching the parking lot behind the school. Thomas couldn't imagine how they would ever convince anybody of Muchnick's guilt. They had evidence, but it was circumstantial at best. Thomas knew the entire case rested on the talents of a bionic dog that communicates his results telepathically. They decided then and there they would have to catch Muchnick and his assistant in the act. McGrowl stayed especially close to both children. The dog was sure of one thing. Whoever Mel Muchnick was, he wasn't what he seemed. And that wasn't good.